There he is. Arnaud Develay. Arnaud, man, how you doing today? It's not morning for you. It's today for you. How you doing? You doing all right?
I'm doing fine, Jamal. How are you?
I am doing all right. Arnaud, he is author, political analyst, international lawyer, specializing in international criminal law. His latest books, Foreign Entanglements, Joe Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of American Political Consensus. You know, I never asked you about that. What do you mean by the fracturing of American political consensus? What's that last blur means in our political system?
Well, it meant essentially that up to now we had proxies operating on behalf of U.S. interest in X, Y, and Z countries, never to a point where the U.S. would completely take over the running of the country in a way that would influence back on the U.S. congressional agenda.
Right.
So Ukraine became de facto almost like a U.S. state, and that's something we had never seen before, including in Vietnam, where we had our guys, or even in Iraq, where Saddam was doing U.S. bidding for years. But whatever was going on within Iraqi society was not of the U.S. business per se on a day-to-day basis. Whereas here we're talking about, as Andre Derkash mentioned, an external management model. So that's what I meant by that. It was a
Interesting.
departure from the usual way of doing things.
Like the Shah, for example, in Iran. He does his own thing, even though
He does
he,
his own thing. Yeah, as long as the oil, the cheap oil keeps flowing, whatever you need to do to keep things under control, we are not going to bud into it. We trust you to do it for us. Period.
but Ukraine was different because Ukraine was direct management.
Yes, Ukraine laws were actually written by the U.S. State Department. So the legislative agenda was completely controlled by the U.S. Embassy in Kiev.
Explain to me something. So I was in a conversation yesterday with Sarah Bills, DD Geopolitics. And one of the things that came up was the Caucasus. And again, this is, I was fascinated by the conversation because I didn't have an answer for it. I didn't quite understand it. How did Russia lose these countries? Now, you may say they're small, fair enough. Um, from my understanding, more of Ukraine has been taken than the entirety of Azerbaijan, meaning size-wise. Like if you can put Azerbaijan into the territory that Russia is effectively taking from Ukraine, fair enough. But it is still somewhat of a pain in the ass to lose these countries that were, let's say, part of the Soviet Union and part of Russia's sphere of influence that seems to have fallen out of their sphere of influence. Armenia is a good example. Pashtian has been leaning further and further to the west. And I understand he took feelings when Nagorno-Karabakh was taken and Russia was like, hey man, you're leaning to the west. Why are you asking us for help now? If Azerbaijan goes into Armenian territory, fair enough, but the world doesn't consider Nagorno-Karabakh Armenian territory. And even Azerbaijan, where they seem to have gotten closer to Turkey, lean closer to the United States. I mean, even to the point of talking about putting a corridor. I can't think of the exact name of it at the moment. I can see it in my mind of where it is. Um,
Zangezur.
Thank you. Thank you. I wasn't going to be able to pronounce
I know.
but you get
It's
my
not easy
point,
to.
right? Like they were talking about like a 99-year contract with the United States. Okay, that's outrageous. If you're Russia or Iran, the notion that the United States is going to have this kind of military component, like right on their border, is outrageous. How did Russia lose these countries? Like, what pushed them away?
Well, I think we need to look in at the circumstances. If you speak about Armenia, the circumstances which saw the election of Pachinian. Pachinian was a U.S. plan from the get-go. So that's basically how it played out. It was a velvet revolution, dressed with all the legal clausing of democracy. But Pachinian was already working for the West. And so that's par for the course as far as what we've seen happening ever since. And Azerbaijan, I think you have to look at at the situation through the prism of pan-Turanism and this alliance of Turkic people.
Right.
So yeah, so that's
But
the
is that a
idea.
good?
The
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is that a good excuse? Like meaning,
Well,
go
it's
ahead.
not a matter of excuse. It's just you basically try to pry the Anglosphere always examines ahead of time when they want to try to establish a foothold. They are looking at the pre-existing and long-standing ethnic and or religious and or geographical issues or dead spot, as it were,
Yeah.
and they press on that and they exacerbate this particular element so that they can create this kind of constructive chaos out of which they pull their nuggets from. This is how they do it. So I wouldn't say that Russia lost those those areas per se in terms of influence. It's just that I guess we're like 2017, Syria, Russia was involved in Syria, and I don't think they necessarily you know paid great attention to what was going on in the South Caucasus, while the Western powers were already actively trying to position themselves to initiate a process which today sees them pretty much well ensconced. I mean, that's
Yes.
euphemism to say that. I mean, that's
Yes.
it. They're in.
Which is my
They
point.
got in by the back door. Yeah.
Which is my
But
point.
yeah,
Like,
and they probably accelerated, because Georgia, admittedly, was candidate to create a, someone would say a second front, right? But that failed when the Georgian Dream Party won the election. They tried one last time through the lame duck president to contest the result of the elections in Georgia, but that did not follow up on the
right.
street. I mean,
That part.
the attempt to color revolution the country failed. So they had to find an alternate solution in earnest, and so in so doing, they reactivated this the South Caucasus card, and we see it because everything is almost coordinated to a T between the actions of Pachinian against the Armenian Apostolic Church, which is the core component of Armenian DNA. I mean, you cannot be as an Armenian living abroad, wishing to reconnect with your roots and let's say get Armenian citizenship. You have to prove that you were baptized by the Armenian Apostolic Church.
Really?
You have to provide a certificate of baptism. So you don't have an Armenia without the Armenian Apostolic Church. It's almost like unfathomable as a proposition on its face.
Wow.
And so when we see, because I mean, it would have been unheard of, unthinkable for any Armenian heads of state, secular heads of state, to go after the Apostolic Church. It's almost like
It's unheard of.
it's completely crazy on its face to do that, right? I mean, you could have political rivals and what have you, within domestic politics, but to go after the church, because the head of the church of the Armenian Apostolic Church is reputed to be the direct descendant of the founding apostle. You know, apostolic means apostle, right? So it's the oldest Christian nation in the world, and as such, the church is it's not just like in the what I call the zombie Catholic Church in France. The Armenian Apostolic Church is a very vibrant component of the Armenian political scene, and to go after their leaders who are not just elected, but they are they have some kind of celestial mandate, almost a direct descendants, direct line. Yes, it's crazy, and replace it by some guys that you chose, from your own acquaintances. It's unfathomable,
Oh,
unfathomable.
that's super interesting. I Is it that Russia is playing a different game than the West? And just to be clear, this is not me making an argument to overthrow governments. This is not me making an argument to assassinate people, none of that stuff. But I give you another example. This Germany. Germany has been making a play I think this is Armenia, if I can remember correctly. Yeah, they're putting in NGOs, they're putting in groups, they're making money into media, they're doing all of this stuff in order to change the point of view and the context of people in Armenia. And I'm saying when the West is trying to get into countries, it does something similar. I mean,
That's part for
we
the
saw
course. That's like a playbook.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at. Like
Yeah.
90% of the media that was going into Ukraine was being paid for by USAID, NED, et cetera, in order to shape
Mm.
and change the point of view of the Ukrainians, especially the West. Why? Russia clearly can see that that's happening. And yet it doesn't seem to do or contest those actions that I can tell. What's different? Why don't they do that? I don't have an answer for this question, and this question is fascinating to me because, from my point of view, in the states, South America is our sphere of influence. Canada is our sphere of influence. Look at what Donald Trump is doing to Canada right now. He's putting the screws to Canada because Canada is taking a point of view on Palestine. Now it's absurd, but he's doing it. And you can go back, oh, God knows how many years or decades that the United States and the South America is our sphere of influence. We will exert influence over them. Now, granted, we were paying for kill squads. That's not what I'm asking Russia to do. But I am curious as to why Russia doesn't take actions like this. RT, Sputnik are somewhat recent phenomena. Um, what's the difference? Why don't they do this?
I think it has to do with political culture, first and foremost. Imperialist state devise a whole slew of instruments to accomplish their aims.
Yeah,
And the hybrid warfare has been, almost like the Anglosphere has a copyright almost on this way of doing things. Whereas Russia privileges somewhat, first and foremost, a military might. But sometimes military might, I mean, it's almost like a hammer. Anytime you see a screw, you have a hammer. So that's a one trick pony. That's one solution.
right.
But you could avoid having to resort to deploying your armed forces when the proverbial, what, hits the fan, by having, some kind of similar counterpart equivalent. It's not complicated. I mean, Russia has the budget for that, but why don't they do it? I don't know.
Okay.
They don't believe in it. It's deeply ingrained in political culture. They don't really believe in this, or see the use of it. I guess it's as plain as that. That's my take
Yeah.
on it. And
Okay.
I
So
believe me, I,
there's
I know what I'm talking about.
yeah.
I've been trying to advocate for that, but it just seems like
So you've been
you know
advocating, they just don't
we have
believe it.
our SS-27, we have our Zircon hyper missiles, we have our what have you, right? That's enough if need be.
But it's
And I
not
guess it's
enough.
also it also reflects I guess when you play chess, the whites are going to open, so you play offense, and then the blacks are going to defense. Well, Russia has always adopted historically a defensive stance on any kind of theater. That's how they do it. They don't create the situation, they remedy the situation using good old-fashioned military capabilities.
I know, but you
So
can
in that
avoid.
sense, with that mindset, they don't feel like they need to influence countries abroad. And then I guess it's also a remnant of the shading of imperial Soviet times. Under the Soviet Union, you would have had all those things, yes, because there was a driving ideology, and the idea was trying to promote this ideology,
Right.
all the way down to Africa, even though they were presented as liberation movement in Rhodesia and Angola, I mean, Cuban troops were in Africa
Right.
liberating some of those countries, like Zimbabwe and all that. So, but there was, like I say, the driving ideology, which basically allowed for budgets to be allocated to some, propaganda activities, soft power, one would say today, soft power. But today, the Russian Federation does not do that. Russian Federation is a very conservative country in its approach to foreign policy. They really intervene, like we saw in Syria. I mean, they didn't try to mollify the ground before they went in. It took a lot of round trips by the late Soleimani to Moscow to explain to them, if you don't cut the head of the snake in Syria, you will find them in the Caucasus.
Right.
And it wasn't like a one trip or one visit that resolved it. It took a lot of massaging. And in the end, when Russia made its decision, they went in with military force. There was no intermediary step, no hors d'oeuvre, no appetizer. You just go in with the pièce de résistance immediately.
I know, but then you
It's a
get left,
policy. It's a I guess
but it's a bad
it's
policy. And
it's
then you
political.
get, because then you get
I don't know if
Lavrov.
it's bad.
You don't,
I don't know if
then,
it's
but you get
well. I
Lavrov.
mean,
You get Lavrov out there saying it's Russia fighting the world. And it's like,
yeah,
dude,
it is. Well, not the world, but the West, the whole West. Yes,
right.
that's what he
But
said.
if
Yeah.
your policy is we're not going to intervene, we're going to do our own thing, we're going to leave countries to their own devices, and the U.S. policy is we're going to work and dump money and everything else that is possible into these countries to get them to agree with us. If we have to bribe, steal, kill, whatever it is, we're going to do it. And then you get surrounded, which that's what I'm saying. Like, is it really a better policy if how you end up is soft power is allowing and bringing these countries into your camp, whereas we are waiting until we're going to use military force? By the time you use military force, it seems like you've given up the ghost. I mean, it seems like it's too late. It's, as you say, a brutal hammer when really you may not have needed a hammer if there was more soft power being exerted.
I agree, but there's this whole stigma of outspending what you have in your coffers
Yeah.
to such an extent that you go bankrupt. And this is what happened to the Soviet Union. Remember,
Yes. Yes.
by trying to actively being on the offense, ideologically speaking, back in the days of the Cold War, that ended up because of, I guess, the economic model was flawed, but whatever the explanation, in the end, it led to the collapse of the Soviet Union, not as much because of, specific policies, but because they spent more money than they were generating,
Yeah.
and at the expense of probably domestic needs. And so basically, yeah, that was the game plan back then, was to basically outspend them and force them to outspend their own capabilities until basically the edifice collapsed.
I
And this is
see.
what the West is actually trying to do today, because this is the same playbook. The West is sticking to the same playbook as far as Russia. They want them to expand. This is what in fine, when you read between the letters, between the lines, sorry,
Mhm.
the Rand Corporation white paper in 2019.
Overextend
Look at
Russia.
the title. It's all in the title. It's exerting, stressing, and
Overextending.
basically, yeah, overextend Russia at its borders and beyond to the extent it's possible. So the last thing the Russian leadership wants to do these days is to be sucked into some kind of quagmire where all their blood and treasure will be spent for nothing. And if the Syrian situation is any example of that, we saw that even under very carefully managed conditions, it can still happen. Which is probably
Well,
also another reason why when they realize that I guess it's the chicken or the egg, because if you were to ask me, if you save somebody's ass politically, your ass belongs to you. You're gonna say what I say. You're gonna say what I do. You're gonna remove those people and replace them with such people. But in Syria, we didn't see that. In Syria, there was this discourse that Syria is a sovereign state and we are no one to tell President Assad what he should do. Well, maybe to some extent, but the problem is President Assad then was surrounded by people who basically told him to act against Russian interest. And so one thing
explain
led
it.
to
Wait.
another.
You got to explain that. How was he acting against Russian interests?
Well, in 2020, there was a purge in the national security apparatus of Syria, and all the pro-Russian officers were removed from Damascus to provincial areas. So they were essentially taken out of the loop.
I see.
And in that sense, some of the people who were behind this started establishing contact with Turkey and Qatar. And over time, they convinced Assad that salvation lay with the Arab League and the Gulf states, and through the Gulf states, we'll be able to manage the lifting of the sanctions. I mean, why not? On the paper, why not? It looks like something that you could envision, but in the end, that was a trap. There was never any intent. I mean, can you imagine the Gulf state actually having the leverage to convince the United States, and more importantly, behind the United States, the state of Israel, to lift the sanctions against one of their secular enemies in the region, one of the linchpin of the axis of resistance? So it was always an illusory promise, if you ask me. But that's what they were. That's the playbook they adopted.
But I guess that's kind of my point. Like for Iran, for example, Pezeshkian and the reformist government, and you get Israel, who has blood on their hands, and knocking on their door, and the U.S. is like, "Hey, let's negotiate," and Iran is like, "Okay." It's like these people are monsters. What do you mean negotiate?
I know you don't negotiate with monsters.
Yeah, it's like you can see them going through the countryside, taking down government after government after government. It's like there's Iraq, there's Afghanistan, there's Libya, there's Syria, and with blood on their hands, they're like, "Hey, let's talk." And Iran
let's talk.
Like, okay.
Yes, sure.
So
why
it's
not?
like, I don't get it. Like I didn't understand it for Iran, and even for Syria, it's like, why on earth are you talking to these monsters? And yet, but I guess that's what I'm saying with the Russia thing. It behooves Russia to exert more political influence to avoid these situations. Syria wasn't bad. Syria was a good play on the Russian side. I agree with that play. I thought that play was fantastic.
But Russia didn't want to be perceived, I guess, in the narrative as a country that basically. I know. Well, like I said, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. No matter what you do, the Western press is going to portray you as an authoritarian regime, blah, 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 blah. You know the spiel.
Yes.
So what do you care about? I mean, I know. You're preaching to the converted here. I know.
Iran, Syria, China.
It's a serious game here. Yeah, geopolitics, because you lost, I mean, some might say the game is still on. There was a Syrian delegation in town yesterday. So the discussion about some of Russia's interest in Syria, the country formerly known as Syria, might still be preserved. Time will tell. But
the terrorist government,
why would you? Well, I don't know. They're going to try to extract something. But are they really independent to begin with? Are they really autonomous? That's the question. Are they? Because I think, if I recall, there was this little scene in Riyadh where Julani was somehow presented and he had to kiss the rings of who.
Yes.
This picture speaks volume to me. So what margin of maneuver does he have?
Yes.
I don't think that much.
Yes. I got to be honest, man. Russian policy is confusing to me sometimes. Because to me, look, I agree with you. If you save somebody's ass, you have influence.
I own that ass. That's right.
Or you own that ass. Fair enough. You own that ass. The ass is yours, right?
Thank you.
And then you're not going to exert influence on that ass when that ass is doing stuff that is not in your best interest or that ass's best interest.
Yeah.
I don't get
that. And we're still talking about thousands of lives lost and billions of dollars, not rubles, dollars in dollar value wasted, essentially, with no certainty that your bases will be preserved, which is really what the key interest is all about for Russia, is conserving those two bases.
Do you see?
Because your whole African policy, your whole projection into African heavily relies on conserving those two bases in Syria. I mean, there are plan Bs, if not plan Cs, but let's be serious, I mean, those deep water ports, Tartus, and most importantly, the air base in Nemin, this is really like a trump card, no pun intended. So why would you put yourself in a situation where you might one day have to sit across from a bunch of, well, not a bunch, I mean, the terrorist organization, and not even a government. I mean, there was no election. Right. They are self-proclaimed. in order to try to persuade those people who depend on Turkish support and American support to make life easier for you. I mean, Africa is what? Africa is the rare earths, is it's minerals, it's all kind of things. It's the battleground of the 21st century, along with the Arctic Circle. So this is huge. So why would you jeopardize, or endanger at the very least, your power projection capabilities by not doing what needs to be done to make sure Syria remains in your sphere of influence?
Yes. Yes. That's all I'm asking. Yes.
That's it.
Because
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
asking the question, but I guess the
yeah.
answer is
I
in the
agree.
question.
I guess I'm saying I agree.
That's pretty
We're
simple
in
to
full
me.
agreement. Yeah, we're in full agreement.
Yeah. So,
Like,
so if it's a reputational risk that you are fearing, like I say, I mean, it doesn't really matter. Like I say, for years now, years, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. They've decided that you have no place. You don't belong. You're not even
Donald
a human being. I mean, Russophobia attests to that.
Donald Trump is
Yeah.
calling what Putin is doing depraved in Ukraine as he allows
Depraved.
the murder
Yeah.
and
Mm.
starvation of Palestinians that we are
So
paying for.
millions of people. Yes, I know.
Yes. So I am
Yeah, but
trying to make the point of saying
it's just
their propaganda is always going to be Russia could save a baby, like literally go out and save a baby. And they would
they would
say,
find a
yeah,
way to call into question the motive of Russia doing so.
exactly. That's my
Yeah,
point, right?
yeah,
So it's
I know.
like it can't be a concern. And I don't quite get why the Russian government doesn't get that. Do you see a turn on this where they're like, okay, maybe we need more influence? I mean, look, the Russian government did put out Sputnik and did put out RT. Both of those things have been heavily influential. I mean, that's part of the reason that Europe got rid of them
They
because
have
they were
great
scared.
successes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Fantastic
especially Africa,
operations.
Brazil, etc. So they
Yes.
do have their outlets where they can get their point of view across, even in the states. I mean, there was one of the Congress members said more people are watching RT than watching CNN because nobody takes CNN
Indeed.
seriously. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I covered this before. And so when I see like Syria falls, and I'm like, what the F? What the F? And then
Yeah.
you tell me, yeah, Bashar al-Assad was moving in directions that was against Russian interests. And it's like, but they saved his ass.
Not
How?
well, not Bashar himself. Bashar was surrounded by people at the National Security Bureau who basically swayed him into turning away somewhat from Russia. On a personal level, he always invested in Russia, but at the level of the country that he headed, that stopped translating into concrete reality around 2020.
Yeah, but the only thing that matters is on the level of the
When
country.
when just when the victory was within reach, mind you,
Yeah,
the only thing left to do was to obliterate Idlib,
Italy.
and that would have been the end of it, and we might still be talking about Assadist Syria today.
Yeah, the
But by
percentage.
freezing front lines and allowing those people to regroup, juxtaposing it with then the Ukraine conflict starting and the porosity between Idlib and Kiev, with the Kievian intelligence coming and to train the would-be next ruler of Damascus in the art of drones. Yeah, that made but in the end, I mean, there was a lot of even open clashes between Syrian officers and Russian officers. Somehow it was a very insidious process. Russia tried to do the same thing with the Syrian army and to initiate them to the drone, and the Syrian refused because they were under orders to basically don't trust the Russians.
That is deeply
Russians are
frustrating.
not part of the axis of resistance. They are not from the
That is
region.
deeply
And I
frustrating.
guess the writing was on the wall because when Russian companies came, basically the contract went to local trade families. They resumed basically what they had been doing before, all along. So the Chinese, they came in, they smelled it, they saw what was happening with the Russians, and somehow they learned the lesson not to get involved that much. And actually in Damascus, I recall that they were lamenting that China was not investing further because China was cognizant of the pre-existing situation developing between the Syrian national security apparatus and the Russian military presence there. And so they started taking notes, I guess, and they decided that maybe it might not be the right moment to invest anything
I know
yet.
this is deeply frustrating to hear. Deeply frustrating to hear.
Yeah.
Because to me, and maybe I look at it, I guess, like a game of civilization or chess, that these are, let's say, pieces on a geopolitical board that are important to keep in a corner. And when they fall, it allows, let's say, capabilities that weren't there prior before the fall. Like Israel could have never attacked Iran without Syria falling and collapsing. And Turkey, where Erdogan is a snake, has a large amount of control over an area that, as you point out, Russia wants to maintain in military bases. Okay, but those bases aren't safe. Like Erdogan can't be trusted. And so it's just deeply depressing. I know these countries look at themselves as countries, fair enough. I look at them as countries, yes, but also there's a larger geopolitical reality that they need to face if they want to maintain their own integrity as states. And
Well, I guess what we're trying to somewhat, we're dancing around the subject, but some people might say that Russia needs to be a little bit more devious.
hard ass, yes,
Well,
mischievous.
you gotta fight fire with fire, right? I mean, you can't just be showing up like in your communion robe, to a hell's bell, whatever, hell's party, right? You gotta be devoured. So you gotta be vicious. You gotta be twisted. You gotta, don't take the gloves off, man. Yeah, I
But
agree
see,
with you. No, but
but
that's
Russia,
true.
but you
But
guys
that's
in
part of
China,
the. I think again, it's part of the Russian political culture, and
yeah,
orthodoxy plays a big role in this. The sense of honor, the sense of not striking an
oh,
enemy while it's down.
oh, don't tell me
And
that. I don't
sometimes
even
you
tell me
gotta
that.
be. Well, I mean, there's a little bit of that. I think.
Because
We
this is
should
what
not
Iran
dismiss
is
it
doing.
right out of hand.
Where Iran was like, well, we're fighting a moral war. It's like, what? Fighting a moral
Yeah,
war?
exactly. Moral war. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There is something, though, that you mentioned that I think is fascinating. You said during the USSR or Soviet Union, there was an ideology. And the
Yes.
goal was to spread that ideology where you got the West versus the East in regards
Well,
to
it
ideology.
spread it, and it structures also what you're doing because everybody is on the same page. I mean, literally,
Yeah.
right? So there's no contestation. You had political commissar who were always accompanying. You saw the movie Red October, right? So
Yes.
you have the Soviet commander of the submarine, and he's flanked by a political officer who's there, who examines everything that he writes, but that he connotes on his registers, on his carnet bord. Who's there when he talks to the crew, and everything has to be ideologically aligned
But
with
there is
part.
kind
Yeah,
of something. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm interrupting you. But
no,
there
no,
is
that's
something.
what that's all I had to say. But that's it might have been taken to maybe a step too far. But
Level here.
with a
There is,
structuring ideology, you can accomplish much more than just like a simple manager.
but there does seem to be something like that being created. Like, and
Like
it's
what?
it's an opposition. Like, so for example, the U.S. the way it operates, it's far more
I know where
clear.
you're going here. You're
Yeah,
saying that so the new prevailing ideology basically is in opposition as to
yeah,
what's being imposed by the globalist,
exactly.
to
It's
for lack
like
of a better
we are
word.
a hegemonic government, meaning we want hegemonic control of the globe. And you
Yeah.
get Russia, China, Iran, many of these states in Africa saying, well, look, we are not for hegemonic control. We want multipolarity. We want
Mhm.
governments to be sovereign. We want to engage and work with those governments, whereas the US wants hegemonic control. And
So
which one
far,
do
so
you
good.
prefer? Yeah, that
But
seems to be,
I would submit that at some point you gotta be more acting more than just being in reaction to something. You
yeah,
gotta propose something affirmative platform. I mean, somebody who basically runs for office in any country on the platform that is against what his rivals for the in the race are proposing is not. It's not going to be elected. You got to be out there promoting something, proposing something. And I don't get the feel that we have something that's articulated in that sense.
yeah. it seems like it's naturally occurring, not intentionally occurring, if that makes sense. Like it's almost like they're coming around to the idea. I mean, BRICS is a really good example. It's like, okay, we're going to come together with these countries. We have differences in these countries, but we're going to get fair exchange, fair deal. It's not going to be this hegemonic control where you're being influenced by the West. And that argument seems to be getting louder in the way that the argument is being made, with many countries agreeing with that argument, saying we need to ditch the dollar, we need to come up with something else, et cetera, et cetera. It does seem
Yeah,
to
but
be
they
an
don't want to
argument.
come up with something else, and they've been actually painstakingly trying to maybe even reassure the American that this is not the case, that there's not going to be a BRICS currency.
That's
The
what their mouth.
Americans are convinced, in their mindset, the Americans are victim of their own preconceived perception of things, is that BRICS is going to come up with a currency to rival the US dollar. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's going to be a basket of currency. But
America is
it's
right.
interesting and very revealing that America would think that there's a BRICS currency. I mean, yeah, you
America's
know,
right. America's right on this. I don't believe BRICS. Look, I'm not against it. I'm just pointing out that America's like, okay, you're trying to subvert the use of the dollar. Putin has made speeches talking about this. Putin made this speech one day where he said America created $10 trillion out of thin air and went to war with nothing. Like basically, when you have the capability of the main currency and you could just conjure money up, what does that mean? Like in the context of military, what does it mean in the context of society, where everybody else can't do that? Like Russia can't just say, we're just going to conjure up $10 trillion. You can't do that. Nobody else can do that. And he's like, that is a weapon. Like in and of itself, beyond all military hardware and everything else, that is a weapon. And that is a weapon that needs to be mitigated. I don't, I know BRICS is saying, look, we're not challenge the dollar. We're not trying to do any of this stuff. Even if it's a basket of currencies is still almost de facto a currency. I'm not against it. I'm just saying it is. I think BRICS is full of shit.
well, I guess my point was that the US propaganda machine actually, they stated that there was a BRICS currency, as if there was like a sui generis, out of thin air, a new currency composed of, and backed by gold bullions from all the countries that belong into BRICS. But
Right.
it's not the case.
Yeah.
But the fact that the American propaganda would actually, for internal purposes, I guess, would promote this notion, is interesting in and of itself, because it shows that, this to them, in terms of power relation, vis-a-vis one another, you would have to come up with a rival currency, not unlike what we've seen in the European Union.
Right.
But to be balanced here, that's exactly what I think the BRICS members don't want to do, because they're saying that the euro is essentially captive to the dollar and dependent on its fortunes. Fortunes are, in that sense, in its potentiality to depreciate. The euro is not worth, really. I mean, it's an abstract notion. So what I'm saying is, by extension, they also do not want to recreate a form of a Soviet Union type of structure, and or what you would see in the European Union today, which is almost like a reversed version of the old Soviet Union in Europe, with a lot of countries that are essentially captive from a non-elected, non-legitimate center. So this is something they really want to stay away from. That's why you're not going to see, and Putin said that much in his last final speech in Kazan. He said, we will not have an overarching bureaucracy, a BRICS bureaucracy. That's not going to happen. The echelon of relations between BRICS members will remain nation state to nation state.
Right, which is an argument that they're making to the rest of the world also. Yeah. I agree with you with the euro.
But it's a sensible argument.
Yeah. Which is my point about spreading an ideology, even if they're not doing it heavy-handedly. The U.S., in the Soviet Union, the U.S. had a soothing argument of, hey, we're love and light, we're freedom, look at our big supermarkets, we're fantastic, we're America, we don't believe in overthrowing governments. We're not heavy-handed. This was the propaganda that they put out, etc. That argument doesn't work today. That argument is more like we are hedging
Well,
our
I would go
bets.
further than that. Actually, the propaganda was backed by a measure of reality because at the
Yeah.
time, there was no neoliberal policies. It was good old traditional capitalism. So anybody with hard work could somewhat feed his own family and have a house and provide, in other words, right?
Yes.
Whereas today you don't really have that. Today you have a banking cartel that essentially sucks all the hard-earned dollars from the not just the American population, but I would say the collective West population, because
Hmm.
Europe, as we've seen last week again, is completely being
Got it.
sucked dry by the U.S. Yes,
Yeah.
they're trying to delay, I guess, their demise or the demise of their economy, which does not produce anything anymore. But my point is, yeah, essentially back in the days, yeah, there was a sense of the American dream that somewhat still sounded, yeah, if you work hard, you make it. You know, you'll
That's
find
not today anymore.
a bank. Today, the American dream does not, that has a lot of, yeah, it's,
Yes. Yes.
yeah, it's not
And
quite there anymore. A lot of
it's
TikTok videos are attesting to it. People talking in their car about not being able to pay, like for the most basic food stuff, or even though they
and
burden themselves with tens of thousands of dollars in debt to go to
yeah.
school, they played by the book, they played by the social contract norms that were imposed onto them, and in the end they find themselves in their late 20s, early 30s, and for a big portion of the population that age, they cannot even contemplate getting a mortgage, getting health insurance, just basic stuff. I mean, which back in the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s even was still, a reality. Even
And
some
negative
would say even
hegemony.
to the mid 90s. Everything started changing in the late 1990s.
And naked hegemony. That too. Like this idea of
Yeah,
being
the
heavy-handed.
whole West, the whole collective West is
Correct.
facing the same problem.
But
All
I'm
their
saying that
youths
sucks.
are
But that sucks.
depressed.
If you are in a different country and the United States is trying to tell your country what you should or shouldn't do, that sucks. Look at what we're doing to Brazil. It's like we don't like you going after Bolsonaro, and so we're going to put tariffs on your country. Okay, who the f are you? We don't like
Mhm.
Iran because they're Iran. Like this missile stuff is just a stalking horse. I'm saying that is a crappy argument that is being made today openly by the U.S. that you must use our dollar. We will intervene into your country when we want to intervene
It's a
in yours.
matter of national security. The dollar as a reserve currency is a matter of, it's the nuclear core of America's ability to project power.
I know, but how the hell
So
can you tell me
there
what
might
I
not be a
do?
BRICS currency per se, but the very fact that those countries are slowly but surely opting out of trading in dollars, meaning that the dollar supply is shrinking,
Right.
meaning it's there's less and less faith in the dollar. Nobody wants to buy treasury bonds. That's why we have this tug of war between Trump and Powell for the last
Yes.
6 months. Because Powell does not want to uh, uh, adjust
Interest
the
rate.
interest rate. Yes,
Right.
because he
Or
wants,
lower interest rates.
to maintain the, yeah. Whereas Trump needs to lower the interest rate because he wants the world to buy more treasury bonds. But at the same time, the president of the chairman of the Fed, he has responsibility to the cartel that he represents. And the idea is, if we increase too much the interest rate, yes, we're gonna get more money to make the federal government functions and to finance all the wars. But we cannot, go too drastically one direction or the other. So this is on this particular point. Trump needs fresh money to refinance the debt, the U.S. debt, which is almost like a yearly struggle. Some countries it's more like every 3 or 4 or 5 years they have to refinance their debt. France is in this situation right now. In the
Yeah.
US, it's every year that they have to find fresh money to to finance their activities. And in order to do so, you need to have an interest rate that allows you to yeah, basically have people producing having people buying funds, treasury bonds, which in exchange, because owing to the interest rate, allows for money to be created out of thin air. But
Yes.
Powell doesn't want to tinker too much. It's a very delicate system. Otherwise, you run the chance of blowing apart the whole scam, which is what it is. It's a scam, right? So we'll see if Powell gets taken out and is replaced by someone more malleable.
He's
That might actually be long term a good thing for the rest of the world. We'll see what happens.
president doesn't control the Federal Reserve. He doesn't. If he did, Powell would have been out by now.
Yes, but
President,
well, I don't know. I'm not so sure about this because if you look at the evolution of on this particular issue of the interest rate, and by extension, the guy in charge of the Fed right now, and Trump has 3.5 years to go. He doesn't want to be a political lame duck, so he has to be able to, find the money. He has to find fresh money to keep functioning.
yeah,
And he has adopted. We know now. We can see with the BBB, he's obviously decided to forego spending on federal spending. So we need to go into more debt so I can finance my wonderful economy. And in so doing, I need to have like a free hand to do so. And so if I need to adjust the interest rate to create this funny money, monopoly money, then the chairman of the Fed should appear. This is the third.
Fed.
This is where it's at now.
Uh-uh.
But so we'll see what
Totally.
happens. But I would put a couple of dollars on Powell being forced out. Just
I
to let
will.
you.
I will take your money. I am my prognostication is damn good. When
Mhm.
Sarah was on the show and Sarah made that bet,
Okay,
I
we'll
could have
see.
taken her cash. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, Jerome Powell doesn't care one iota what Trump says. Trump has no power to
No,
take
he
him out of
doesn't. That's why he has to go.
Short Powell is not waking up one morning. He's not going anywhere. Unless Trump
We'll
has an
see.
assassin that is going to
We'll
pull
see.
it in Powell. Okay, fair enough. Let's see. Let's see.
All right.
Mark this
Yeah.
down. Mark this down. When Powell was with Trump the other day, and Trump came up with this thing and got it wrong, Powell was so just annoyed. Like when you see European leaders, you see them cowering before daddy. Powell didn't care at all. In fact, Powell was like, "You're wrong on camera. You're wrong. You just got this wrong." He is a capitalist in an oligarch society with a bunch of other capitalists, with him being the head. He does not
Well, I
care.
don't know if he's a capitalist. Because capitalist is something else in my playbook. Those guys, it's something else. No, it's a plutocracy, right? It's
Yes,
a plutocratic
yes.
model. So plutocracy does not allow for talent to emerge and the free market to do what it needs to do to weed out the mediocres and promote real innovative, hardworking ones. I mean, the U.S. economy is anything but that. But it might have been this in the 1960s, 70s, yes. But from the moment they started outsourcing all the industrial base and relying on financial instrument to finance the economy, we stepped into something else. It's some kind of financial alchemy that has
I'm just
no bearing to good old capitalism of old.
I'm
So
just saying Powell is the head oligarch. And whether he got there through skill,
he's the
talent, or
fiduciary
whatever,
agent. That's what I call
yeah.
him, fiduciary agent. Yes,
But I'm
he
saying that fiduciary
represents.
agent doesn't
Yes.
care all that much what the president thinks, and has a certain amount of contempt for him that you can see anytime they're in close proximity. It's not like the European leaders where they're cowering before Trump. It's not like some of these other people who cower before Trump. Powell he doesn't care. He hasn't shown that he cares one iota what Trump thinks about him.
Well, I think he fears more his employers than Trump. Yeah, if that's what
Right.
you mean, I agree with you.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. He
Right.
knows to whom he owes his job. But
Yeah.
in the end, it depends. It depends. I mean, Trump sees himself as some kind of 21st century incarnation of Andrew Jackson,
He can see himself
right?
however he wants.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Trump
But
can see himself however he wants. It doesn't
yes,
affect
yeah.
reality.
Because it's really like it's between a rock and a hard place. You need to keep financing your overseas operation, right?
Yeah.
So you need to create more debt to do
Right.
so, but you don't want to cheapen the dollar to such a degree that nobody wants to buy treasury bonds anymore.
Right. Right.
So
Let me ask you
something's got to
this.
give at some point.
Is there a difference between a basket of currencies versus making a currency in real terms? I know there's a difference factually, but it's kind of like, is there a difference between Ukraine joining NATO versus NATO training, arming, equipping, all of the stuff with Ukraine? Like those things are technically different, but in reality, they're the same. And I'm saying, is the same thing true with the basket of currency?
Yeah, I don't think the question has to be asked in that from that perspective. I think it's more an issue of which one between the two occupies the most significant volume in world trade. That's really what it's all about.
Yeah.
So reserve currency, by definition, there's consensus. There's a benevolent use of this world currency. No, even though, because we call the dollar as a reserve currency, you might recall the exorbitant privilege, right?
Right.
So, but this was out of, coming out of World War II. So there was a political legitimacy, military legitimacy. America produced 50% of what the world needed in 1945. So you could not go against, those were hardcore economic facts, right? It was an industrial powerhouse, military powerhouse, and that translated into political powerhouse.
Yeah.
But today this is a hollow shell of that.
Yeah.
And it's simultaneously reflected in extremely aggressive policies, tariff policies, and infringement on other countries' sovereignty. So um, that basket of currency looks very applicable to those countries who are trying to emancipate themselves from that. And so,
Exactly.
to the extent they can, preserve their sovereignty over the long run by decoupling from the U.S. dollars, they will do so. It will be a very subtle movement, a long-term, steady drip, drip, drip. But ultimately, it will reach a critical point where, the American dollars as a currency, as a world reserve currency, will cease to exist. And with it, America's capabilities to project military power. Because if nobody buys your treasury bonds, nobody trusts your economy. Nobody trusts your, the viability of your economic system and the dollar representing it. There's no money to be made in terms of investing in this purchase. So then the gig is up, and so
Yeah.
you cannot finance your bases. You have to close your bases. You have to repatriate tens of thousands of U.S. soldiers, close bases all around the world, decommission aircraft carriers, and regroup to make sure that the infection does not reach Washington D.C. Because essentially, if you've read the trilogy of books, Blowback, Nemesis,
Oh yeah. Oh God, he's so
yeah,
good. Chalmers Johnson, I believe.
Johnson.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. Imperial overstretch leads to domestic entropy, and this is what we might see in America. American empire is no different than all the empires that preceded it. We see it with the Soviet Union. When the imperial blowback happened, look at what happened in Moscow and Russia proper for 10 years. It was a wild, wild west, and the country almost disappeared. When the Roman Empire collapsed, same thing. They sacked Rome. The barbarian came into Rome and sacked it. And we're seeing a lot of the things we saw back in Rome, since America likes to compare itself to modern Rome. You can see, for instance, that there's a regain now of signing up, from Americans per se, but as opposed to the woke
Mhm.
ideology. But more and more, we see a lot of people being promised citizenship if they enroll, right? So they are using immigrants to go fight their wars.
I guess this is
We
my
saw that at the
argument.
time in the latter days of Rome. We saw the same thing. A lot of barbarians
Experience.
became Roman generals themselves. So they learned everything that needed to be learned about Roman military tactics, and so on. And they identified the weaknesses. And when the center was too weak, then those generals basically took it upon themselves to try to basically go for the kill, go for the final death blow.
I guess this is my argument that I'm making with Russia, China, etc. That when you have this kind of um, naked, I don't want to call it authoritarianism, but this kind of naked empire, as opposed to the soft hand of empire, that countries recoil from it. Like the behavior of the United States, either under Joe Biden or under Donald Trump, especially under Donald Trump, is outrageous. And it's screwing with this notion of sovereignty in a way that's like, for example, if I have a boss, and my boss says, "Hey Jamal, can you please blow off your lunch because we have extra work that we need to do?" He's asking me, but really he's telling me. But I can accept under my ego that I'm being asked, even though I'm not really being asked. It's another thing to say, "Hey, I need you to blow off your lunch. You're not doing so and so. Go do this." Okay, now you're impinging upon my ego, and you're impinging upon me as a human being and the way I feel about my own autonomy as a person. When you have this naked hegemony that is being applied, or this naked primacy applied to all of these other nations, it doesn't fly. It doesn't sit well. How are you telling Brazil that its prosecutor, part of his legal system, can't operate in its own country? That's outrageous. And it's not going to be accepted by Brazil. Same thing with Russia, same thing with China, same thing with India, same thing with Indonesia, et cetera. By the way, he's going after BRICS nations intentionally because of this whole threat to the dollar. I'm trying to point out, though, that in the old days, in the 70s and 80s, you can make that argument of, well, the United States is love and light, we're freedom. Today, that is not the argument that we make. We make the argument of we need to remain the hegemon. We need to be the prime mover and shaker in the world. It is rules-based order. Our rules, you follow our rules. Those are two very different arguments. Russia is making the alternate argument. China is making the alternate argument, saying, hey, we just want to do business. We're not going to affect what you do in your own countries. We're not going to be this heavy-handed thing. We believe in this kind of united thing under law, et cetera. That is the way that they're seemingly contesting this kind of naked hegemony that the United States is effectively morphed into. I mean, is that enough, though?
Well, it's going to have to be enough, I guess, for the time being. It seems to be
That's all
working
they're
pretty
gonna
well
do.
because, well, I mean, you just have to basically observe what they do and act accordingly.
Yeah.
I guess what we're trying to, if we were to summarize the discussion we're having, it's do you want to be like on the reactive as opposed to proactive? But sometimes, if you read Sun Tzu, you have to let your enemy, allow your enemy to make the mistakes. Or it's Napoleon who used to say, yeah, Napoleon. But it's the same as there are ramifications between Sun Tzu and Napoleon. And Napoleon used to say, whatever you do, don't interfere when your enemy is making a mistake.
Right now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think those are Oriental cultures also. You have to always keep that in mind. So they have a completely different approach about things and about the time. They think in long term, and they don't deviate. They don't allow emotional outburst to dictate the play of the day, or the play of the week, or the play of the next 10 years. You have to stay true to your plan. You may have a variation of that one plan, but by and large, you reach a consensus on an approach, and you stick to that approach. And don't try to overextend yourself. Russia has gone that way before, and with the results that we know. So it's still pretty fresh, in the collective memory. It's only 30 years. It's yesterday. So a lot of those people who lived back in those days are still alive today, although they are in their 70s, 80s now, but they're still there. So that's something that, we're likely to keep seeing. But yeah, more NGOs, I don't think would. Yeah,
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
I mean, they may come up with their own set of criteria to, decide, whether or not it's worth, spending a little bit of money here or there. But yeah, in the end, I think, you should not completely close yourself to the idea of, borrowing a page from your adversary, your rival, your strategic rival playbook, which I'm sure the Russian can do very well, as you mentioned with RT and Sputnik.
Yeah, but that's
present.
NGOs are subversive. Like NGOs, you don't know they exist.
Oh, no, you cannot actually. No, I would say, but you have to keep being overt. Be overt.
Yeah.
Why would you have to hide something? The moment the perception is that you are advancing, surreptitiously, that's when the problem begin to emerge. Because
Seriously? You really believe
yeah, it
that?
can be exploited. Yeah, I believe that you can just promote what defines you. I mean, what's wrong with that? Openly, what's the problem? Transparency. Because if your model is better, at least at this conjuncture in history, then promote that model. Believe in it.
Arnaud,
Assume
you're
it.
too
Own
good of a
up.
person, man. You're too good of a person, and I think I'm horrible as a person. If that, maybe
Well,
I'm
it's not
losing
a
the.
matter of being good or not good. It's a matter of what other people are gonna think if they remotely get a sense that you're hiding something from them. See, that's
The
the thing.
United States spent 90% of the money going into Ukrainian media. They didn't advertise that they were coming from the United States. They just did it with this idea that this is just journalism. This is just us
Yeah.
telling the
And
truth.
what
This
did
is
they
just,
promote in the school books? And I've seen some of those school books.
I'm just
Russia
pointing out.
bad. Russia responsible for everything under the sun.
Yes. And think of Europe right
Yeah.
now, where Europe is going with all of this Russophobia and everything else. Where do you think that came from? They were reporting that stuff
Yeah,
as if it
yeah,
was
I know.
news. I'm saying it
What I'm
worked.
saying is they don't try to hide their message. Their message is right in the open. Well, and then
Yeah.
whatever you might be thinking on the other side of the curtain, that's on you. But as far as the people we're trying to reach, we're not going to try to hide or conceal or mitigate or
But
we
they
mean to
are
say,
hiding and concealing because they're promoting it as if it's independent. That's what I'm getting at. This is not overt. This is very subversive in the way that they're promoting this stuff. They're promoting this stuff like this is just news. It's not just news. It's actually coming from state media where the state itself is
yeah, no,
paid.
I understand. I'm talking about the nature of the message. What I guess we're just differing on technicalities here. What you are alluding to is trying to promote a message using the exact the exact reality of the message of the reality of the message that you want to convey.
Right,
That's
without it
subversive.
coming from the source.
But those guys, they're basically are promoting a message that is in and of itself the end result of the process, which is Russia bad, we good.
I get that. I get that.
Yeah.
But if the British government came out and says, we have propaganda and we want to give you that propaganda, that is very different than here's an independent source that is being paid by the British government that you don't know is being paid by the British government. They're saying, this is just our point of view. Those are different things. You can
Oh, you're
interrogate the
talking about
source.
the donors, the donors. You're talking about the NGOs, yeah, as
Yes,
conduits from
yes.
public money. Yeah, yeah, sure, yeah. But I mean,
God, man, I
but
feel
everybody
horrible.
knows that. I don't think I would assume a lot of people have figured that out by now. That lots of those NGOs are financed by public funding and by governments. Of course, yes.
You will
That's the
be
first thing you
surprised.
do actually when you're trying to identify exactly what kind of outfit this such and such organization is really all about.
But
You
most
go
people
to their
don't know that.
website and you go to about us, our donors, and then you know immediately what you're dealing with.
Most people don't
So
know that. I'm telling you, most people don't know that. Like most people, when most people see a news report from, let's say they're online, and it's okay, this independent person is saying this, they don't know that there's an NGO paying that guy to say that. It's subversive.
well, maybe we should promote certain diligence, and repeat until people figure it out. I mean, for those
Um,
who want to know, because I mean, there will always be people who don't really care about those type of things. But to the
yeah,
extent there are some people who are interested in finding out about the intricacies of propaganda wars, yeah, they should always go on the website of the outfit and
yeah.
go under the the tab, who we are and our donors, and then you'll know. Then you do a research on the list of donors that's listed.
I feel horrible making this argument. I feel horrible making this argument because
I
my
know, but
point of view is craft.
people are
This is
lazy these days. That's the problem. But we have to somewhat urge them to do those type of things. Because
to
how
me.
can
This
the world make any sense to you if you don't do a modicum of research, right? You have to go get the information behind the information.
yeah, but the media in the United States is a 5 minute memory. I can show you
Oh, well,
articles
you're
where
not going to get that from the US media. It's going to be from people, who have their own independent podcast like you.
yeah.
I don't think the networks are going to be advocating for research,
To me, this is like
to Mr. and
statecraft.
Mrs. America on prime time, right before Monday Night Football.
CNN at this point has admitted that, hey, it seems like the Russian is really advancing, but they're taking massive casualties. That's their go-to.
Yeah.
Like their go-to is always the Russian hordes that are
Yes.
taking millions and millions of casualties to get inches of territory. It's like, okay, dude, come on, man. Like the cemeteries. Media
Yeah.
Zona doesn't even go with that, but that's the way they talk about it. It's just